I remember every single detail of my life changing forever. The hot Somali sun blinding me as I climb into the back seat of the Land Cruiser, my lunch of goat and rice, and how I turned my nose away from it, not realizing that it would be my last real meal for months. I can feel the soft fabric of my headscarf. I can smell the sweat of the security guard next to me. The very same man who in a few moments would hand me over to a group of Somali pirates for $100,000. Words of Jessica Buchanan, who in an incredibly moving TED Talk describes in detail every single moment that is so seared with so much pain and so much trauma into her psyche and into her soul. Jessica Buchanan was a humanitarian aid worker in Somalia, and she was held hostage for years. And she delivered this talk about how her life was changed forever, with about 5 years removed from her being free. And I share this with you not because tragically we have a shortage of Jewish hostages, because on the contrary, the opposite is true. We have a glut of Jewish hostages, each one a tragedy in its own way, so incredibly hurtful, so much pain. But I share it with you will not enable them to give words to their experience for years. Buchanan was only able to give words to her experience 5 years removed. The pain and trauma that was so clearly seared into her soul came through every word that she uttered. And I don't think that our hostages are going to be able to be giving voice to their pain for some time. But the same way her life was changed forever, with the reports we do have coming from the hostages, undoubtedly their lives have changed forever. From little Emily Hand and their friend Hila Shoshani were held together in captivity, who now talk with a whisper, barely audible. Her father, Thomas, you could see on CNN, had to cup his ear just to be able to hear her, because they're incredibly traumatized by the fact that they weren't allowed to speak for the over 50 days that they were held hostage. And then how she has to cry herself to sleep inconsolably every night. Or take the hostage who was on the Hamas propaganda video, who had to put on a smile and tell the world, look how great they're treating me. Look, I got a bullet wound in my arm and they operated me and thank God everything is great. When in reality, what's come out is that a veterinarian, not a doctor, a veterinarian has operated on her. And now she has to hold her arm at a 90-degree angle. Or the stories of children being branded. These are pain that doesn't go away. These are people whose lives have been changed forever. And not only them, the members of the kibbutzim, the chayalim who are wounded, even those who are putting on a brave front, like Shimon, a commander in the Golani brigades, who was wounded in an injury and fell into a coma. And when he woke up after his life was no longer in danger, was told that he lost a leg. And he replied, be strong, everyone. Smile. It's nothing to lose a leg on behalf of the state. What unbelievable strength. But undoubtedly his life will never be the same. This past week, I had the privilege of being invited by the OU to a small gathering of rabbis in their headquarters in New York. It was like a think tank gathering together from very diverse areas of the country, insightful, incisive people. And the purpose of the gathering was to consider the topic that we've discussed, which is there's been a tremendous awakening of the Jewish heart. There's been a tremendous awakening of the Jewish spirit, the incredible chesed and tzedakah pouring forth, the people who haven't identified as Jews coming forward in ways that we've never seen before. People are so distant, trying to come close now. But the question is, how do we make that concrete? So to speak, the day after the war, with some Mirza Hashem, the IDF will vanquish our enemies very soon and return our hostages. But the day after, what do we do with that momentum? What do we do with that energy? What do we do with that awakening? How do we make it real? How do we make it permanent? How do we make it enduring? And the truth is, it was very hard to come up with clear answers, and there were some interesting ideas that were tossed around. But at one point, a very prominent rabbi from around the country had an outburst. And he said, I feel like a failure. I feel like a failure. What was the purpose of Hashem sending the most catastrophic, horrible event of our lifetime? The worst thing we have ever seen. Was it just that we should become fluent in another chapter of Tehillim? Great, now of course davening is important, but what is the enduring change that's happening? How will this transform our lives? How will this transform our congregation's life? Of course, it's incredible that so many people have given tzedakah and demonstrated so much achdus, so much camaraderie. But what's going to change? How are we different? What an important question. The truth is, he was coming from a Rambam. The Rambam in the Laws of Fast, Hilchos Ta'aniyos, says as follows, and I want to share it with you. The Rambam says, Mitzvah saseh min Torah. There is a positive commandment in the Torah. Lizok ulahalriya b'chatzortzos al kol tzara shetavo al hatzibor. That whenever God visits anguish or pain or a tragedy on a community, there's a mitzvah to call out to him. Whether it's batsores or dever or arbe, whether it's a plague or a famine or pestilence, any tragedy, call out to God. Continues the Rambam, b'davar zeh midarchei hatshuvahu. This is part of doing tshuva. It's part of transforming ourselves, becoming closer, becoming better people. Shebizman shetavo tzara v'yizaku aleha yedu akol shebiglal maaseim aroim u'ulam. We know that God wants something of us. That in this moment, God is asking something of us. He's calling out to us. And here's the kicker. He says, Avalim lo yizaku v'lo yariyu v'lo yomor davar zeh miminag ha'olam eir alanu. Let's say a person describes a tragedy, a catastrophe. That's the way of the world. It's politics. A cycle of violence. Or you even say that's a Palestinian culture. It's a culture of death. It happened because that's the way the world is. What can you do? And you fail to attribute. The Rambam says, do you know what that means? The Rambam doesn't say it's a lack of faith. The Rambam doesn't say it's a lack of emunah. The Rambam says that's achzor, to attribute natural causes, to attribute or a tragedy to something that is just, that's the way the world works. He doesn't say that's cruel and that's callous. Why would that be cruel and callous? Surely I could understand it's a problem of faith. But cruel and callous, what does that have to do with anything? I think what the Rambam is saying is that if we treat a catastrophe as something which is just the way of the world, it's cruel because it strips the catastrophe of its meaning. It takes out, it removes from the meaning of the catastrophe. God is sending us a message, says the Rambam. And it's our responsibility. If there's all this pain, so much challenge in the world, God's telling us something. If our nation bore witness to the worst things that we've ever seen, to say, oh, that's just the way the world works, is to remove its meaning and to take away from people the ability to see meaning in it. And the meaning means that we're called to ask that question. What does it mean to us? We need to become changed forever. Somehow, says the Rambam, we need not to allow that profound sense of Jewish awakening to disappear. But we need to be different people because of October 7th. All the hostages, all the wounded, all the soldiers, all the people from the kibbutzim, all of their lives have changed forever. And the question we need to be asking ourselves in these moments is, how will ours? What will our lives look the day after the war ends? It's achzonius, says the Rambam. It's callous. It's cruel to pretend that this was normal. It's cruel to say it was a cycle of violence. It's cruel to say, oh, that's the way they act. The most fundamental tenet of Judaism is that God is asking something from us. And it's not just an extra kapitel tehillim. It's not just extra tzedakah, but it's something that has to be deeply and profoundly transformative. That's what happens in this week's Parsha. Yaakov refused to see with Esav through only a political lens. Of course, he prepares militarily. Of course, he prepares physically. But he also prepares spiritually. And the Jewish tradition is always to see tragedy through the reflective, introspective lens of what is God asking from me now. I want to introduce you to a woman named Noga Ashkenazi. Noga made Aliyah to Israel and lives in a community called Alei Zahav, a community in northwest Shomron. And Sivan Rahav Meir shared what she shared on a community WhatsApp group for women. She wrote, "Not everyone here knows who I am. I am a convert to Judaism. We moved to this community a year ago. 7 years ago, I moved to Israel from Germany, where I grew up, and I've never experienced war until now. And I'll be very candid with you. As Shabbos was ending on Simchas Torah and on the day that followed, I had no idea how to cope with what was happening. My first thought was to leave everything and fly back together with my children to my parents in Germany. My family there was already preparing for our arrival. But when I saw the messages coming from the strong women that you are, how you're investing all your efforts to help the war on every front, in every possible way, I was beyond inspired. I was amazed to witness the power of our people, and your strength only increased day after day after day. So I changed my plans not to run away, not to leave, because I am part of this. After all, I am a Jew. This is who I chose to be." And you hear echoes of Rus. Telchi Elech. V'shamek Haver. Germany's no longer my. I'm not a German. I'm a Jew. This is the place in the world that I belong. I'm not leaving. To the contrary, I feel more. And I become so strength. My family in Germany does not understand my choice, but I cannot blame them. You don't know what it means to be part of the Jewish nation until you share its destiny with every cell in your body. With these words, I hope to give back to you, my valiant neighbors, and to strengthen you as well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My friends, these are the words of a changed person. These are the words of Noga Ashkenazi. Now is a different Jew than she was before. Someone profoundly connected. We all share somewhat of that feeling of Noga Ashkenazi today. Differences have disappeared. Achdus and Jewish identity are permeating. But it's so easy for us to return to life as usual, especially the day after the war ends. My friends, the hostages, they don't have that luxury. The wounded, they don't have that luxury. Their experience is seared into their souls. Emily Hand's life will never be the same. Hila Shoshani's life will never be the same. Shimon the Golani commander's life will never be the same. All the people from the kibbutzim, the hostages, the soldiers, their lives have changed forever. And the question we need to be asking ourselves today is, how will ours? Their lives changed. How will our lives change too? Thank you.